and there's also therapy too.
Okay, great. Thank you so
Oh
much
my
for
gosh.
asking me to do this. I'm honored, and I love the show myself. So it was such a thrill to be even a teeny part of it. So thank you for asking me to do this.
Thank you for being so kind and wanting to do this. I honestly, because most voice, or most people send in a voice memo, because that's just what they choose to do. I most of the time I give them an option to, have a talk because I'm a mega fan, as you can tell. So I was like, I would love to talk to anyone for an hour or whatever, but I know time constraints can be crazy. So I'm very excited to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, you might hear my cat in the background, so she likes to talk to us.
Oh, we have a dog that does the same thing. So I shut the door, but you might still hear her.
Okay,
So.
perfect. We love it around here. Well, I was gonna ask. We mostly start with how you got your job on Parks. I mean, I know that you were with Conan for such a long time, and you probably knew Amy from that as well. And I have so many questions about that. And Glazer was on there too, John Glazer. So I'm just curious if that's how you got the job, or if it was like how did you get it?
I'm a little bit unclear on it myself, but I think it was Amy because Amy and I go back to the Chicago days. She was an improv friend of ours in Chicago, along with Matt Walsh and Matt Besser and Ian Roberts, and that they had all gotten to New York about a year before I did. I got hired at Conan in '97, and they had left Chicago. Amy had actually been offered a slot in our Second City cast, um,
Mm.
and I really admired her courage and the UCB's courage to go to New York without a guarantee of getting a show or doing anything. Like I thought that was so courageous to go off and do it, and they really wanted to get their own sketch show. And then when I got to New York in '97, Amy was actually in the very first sketch I wrote at Conan, Andy's little sister, which was I I was it was about Andy's having a little sister who had a crush on Conan, had pigtails and braces, and
Her little headgear moment.
yeah, exactly. And originally, I was thinking, oh, I guess we have to find a 13-year-old girl who is a great actress. And then I was talking to John Groff, our head writer, and we were like, could Amy look 13? Because the performance will be amazing. You know that. Because even in Chicago, it was so obvious how special Amy was. She was, she's one of those performers who seemed fully formed the first time I saw her. I don't remember her. She's just always been amazing. And I'm really not exaggerating in saying that. I did a couple shows in vans, Second City Touring Company shows with her too, before went into the resident company, and she was just a delight in the van, just doing bits. And I remember
So
her,
committed.
yeah, I remember her pretending to be a little orphan girl that we had picked up on the road, and she was super shy and quiet, and we just kept giving her pudding, and she kept going pudding, and she just eating pudding, and she was always hilarious. So, and I really have her to thank in many ways for doing that Andy's little sister sketch because I was supposed to only fill in at Conan for like 13 weeks for a writer who was out, and Amy killed it so hard as that character and made what I think was, I'm not saying this. I like the script and the idea I had, but Amy made it so much better than I'd hoped it would be, and she killed. And the audience loved her, and Conan loved her, and I think that's one of the reasons they decided to keep me on. Nobody told me that, but I think that was one of the reasons. And I ended up working there for 18 years at Conan. So, so
Oh my
thank you,
gosh.
Amy. But Amy, we stayed in touch over the years and did a lot of improv shows at UCB together, Ask Cat shows. My wife Miriam Tolan was also in one of the Andy's Little Sister sketches as Amy's friend. She had headgear too, and Miriam worked at Second City with us, and Amy, we just always were friends. And I think it may well have been her that asked me to do it. I did know some other
Mm.
people there though, like Katie Dippold and Jen
The
Statsky had
writer.
been interns for us at Conan, believe it or not.
Oh
And I'm
wow.
so proud of them. Not that I had anything to do with their success, but they were
You can still
really
be proud.
well. They were such nice. I love when the interns we really like, do so well. And Dan Gore, who worked at Parks and later created Brooklyn Nine-Nine and everything, he wrote with us at Conan. And I knew Norm Hiscock a little bit, great guy. And I knew Nick Offerman a little bit.
Hmm.
Wonderful guy too. I met him. He did a bit for us at Conan too, um, about a guy who had super intense eyes in the audience who was just staring at Conan, and
Oh my gosh.
so he was. We always loved him, and Aziz I had met a few times. Like he did UCB stand up stuff and things like that, and yeah, and I'd met Michael Schur, but I don't really know. And so yeah, I'm guessing it was Amy because she and
They all knew you though. I mean, that's kind of amazing. I mean, she might have been like the one that boiled it down to,
it might
I
have been,
guess.
and I know. In any case, I was so grateful to do it. The funny thing too was it was really I really think it was probably just going to be the one episode that my character Ted was in, because I was supposed to be. I think I was. There was a line about me being like a dentist or something. I can't remember because the line was cut, but
Oh, okay.
because the line got cut, they were able to bring me back as the jeweler. Um,
Oh, sure.
because my occupation hadn't been as Ted's occupation hadn't been established. So I was so thrilled to come back. I was thrilled. I would have been grateful to do just the one episode, but I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of ourselves here.
No, no, no. This is great. I love to hear it all. We kind of go in waves and circles, just because there's so much to talk about. But I mean, well, so that makes sense as far as the casting goes. But they would have called you to do that. Were you living in New York at the time then, or were you in LA at that
I
point?
was in LA at that point actually. We moved out to Conan moved his show out to LA in 2009, and I
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, of
oh
course.
no,
Okay.
yeah, it's easy to forget. And the Tonight Show was very short lived, as you remember. But
Mm-hmm.
we were doing the TBS show when I did Parks. We were doing the show on the Warner Brothers lot, the Conan show there on the TBS lot, which I did for about
Right.
5.5 years, which is really fun. And Amy came by as a guest there, which is really it's always just so
Yeah.
delightful to see her. She's just the best. And yeah, I was in LA at the time. Um, and so it was, it was so fun too. That first episode I did, Patton Oswalt, as you know, in
Oh my
Article 2
gosh.
was he's just the best, and it was such a treat to get to work with him a little bit there. I had met Patton when he was a guest on Conan years before, and we stayed in touch. And he's just one of my favorite people, in addition to being one of the funniest people, like Amy, just as nice as he is funny. And he, as you probably heard, improvised that whole filibuster speech, which
Yes.
is absolutely legendary
Insane.
for a reason and a good reason. But he was
It's
just
crazy that it had such a life outside of parks too, like John Favreau hearing that for Boba Fett,
right.
and just like so many people also just seeing that as a clip, maybe not even being a fan of parks, but they're a fan of Patton, or it was just like on social media or something that are Star Wars fans that were like, what is this park show because of Patton?
I love that so much. That's so great to hear. Yeah, it's funny too. John Favreau was another Chicago improv guy, which is kind of crazy. He was
Oh, I
around
didn't
when,
realize
yeah,
that.
when we were like when I was starting out, he was another just young improv guy. He moved to LA long before anyone else I knew did, and I think
Wow.
Swingers was written about all his experiences when he first got out there. But yeah, Patton was just, and he would throw in these extra little. I'm pretty sure this was an ad lib when they were about to throw me into the lake. Uh, Patton yelled, "Boo! Dunk the miscreant!"
Yes.
And I'm almost positive that wasn't in the script because
Yeah.
uh, it was just a delight. And we took a little picture together out there. It was out near the like Santa Clarita or something, out where they shoot that stuff. And Patton with his little tri-corner hat, and he's just the best
So
guy. So
amazing.
that was a treat. And then even the people I didn't get to do scenes with, it was such a delight to meet them. Like Jim O'Hare. Jim had been in Chicago before I was, and I never knew Jim in Chicago, unfortunately. But I'd always heard what a wonderful guy he is. And he came up to me like after shooting, and it was just he just gave me a big smile, from like across the room, and it was incredible. The thing that struck me the most was what a wonderful family environment they had there, the
Mm-hmm.
crew and the writers and the actors, and it shows in the show. You can't fake that there's so much heart in the show. I hope that doesn't sound corny, but it's true.
It
There's
is.
you can see it when you watch it. Uh, and it was interesting. Michael Schur said this. I went to the Parks and Rec wrap party when the show was finishing up, and I was so grateful to be invited. And my wife Miriam and I went, and he said at the wrap party, he said he got a little. His wife JJ Philbin had said to him he wasn't sure exactly how to approach the show, and she said, "You just have to fall in love with your characters." And I thought that was such
Mm.
a beautiful, and that's exactly what you can tell he did, because everything
Mm-hmm.
in that show had so much heart to it, in addition to having like a wonderful edginess and a point of view, and it was never corny. It was just heartfelt, and
Yeah, I mean, they just created such a community too, which I feel was such a big deal. Not only like off of Offset, which to your point, so many people. I mean, I personally, selfishly, am very lucky that this podcast is about Parks and Rec because every single guest star has said that number one, Amy is like it trickled down. She was just so wonderful and nice and welcoming to every person on set, whether you were there for one day or 40, you know what I mean? So that was a big deal. And so
yeah.
I'm lucky because all the guest stars are always saying, like, they'll go to other shows that are wonderful and nice, but they don't have the community or like the camaraderie that they had on that set or the ability to play as much. Cause, improv was such a huge deal for everybody on that show outside, like before they got to parks. They were either doing improv, stand up, playful things where they could workshop stuff, and that's not really always how it goes on sets, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm lucky that when I reach out to people, everyone's just so kind, and I'm like, this is wild and amazing.
Yeah, that's so true about it trickling down from the top. And I found that at Conan and at Stephen's show, where I work now at Colbert, it really does get set from the top, the tone. And I
Hmm.
saw that at 30 Rock too with Tina. Just being respectful and kind to people, and you get better work from people that way. You have people that want to stay there longer. They're willing to work longer hours because they love being around each other. And but Amy absolutely set the tone from the top, like all the best people do, and made it fun. And she got she got the results she wanted. And if she had to ask for something, she would ask for it, but not
Hmm.
but always in a very respectful way, and a very, and everybody just wanted to make the show really great, and they did.
Yeah.
And
And I
I
think it trickled over to the audience too because it was such a community. The show itself was such a community, bringing back characters like you or Purd or whoever that is creating Pawnee is very significant because I think a lot of times you don't really. It just feels like home. You know what I mean?
absolutely, it really did feel like home. And you felt, even though you were on the Radford lot, where you'd walk out of the building and you're like, oh yeah, I'm on a studio lot in LA. Um, when you're in the room, you're like, oh, this feels like just a community center or city hall in a small town, in
Mm-hmm.
Indiana. And it was just yeah, just a beautiful vibe on set, just of fun and experimentation and making each other laugh. And that really comes through in the show, and it wasn't fake at all.
Yeah. Well, had you watched the show before you were on it too because you knew people or were you I mean, there's so many things to watch.
Oh yeah, I loved it. And I was such a fan of the people on the show already. And I so it was such it was so fun to watch them, just shine like that. And of course, I'd been a longtime fan of Amy's back to like 93. First time I
Mhm.
saw her on stage, she was on stage with Tina in the same improv Olympic team. And it's so
Oh my
crazy
gosh.
that they were just these like 22-year-olds on the same improv Olympic team in Chicago, and they were already very special. Tina was a little shyer and more reserved, but then she would step forward and say something amazing and incredibly smart. And Amy was just full on Amy from the start.
Yeah.
Like I really
Super
don't remember
outgoing.
her being any different than how she is now. She was just always delightful and charismatic. And Tina was too. She was just a little more reserved early on, and
Yeah.
just blossomed so much. But she was always like had that Dorothy Parker wit, and they
Mhm.
always work so
So
perfectly together.
smart.
What's that?
Just so smart. They were both so smart like not only with, uh intellectual, but just so quick and fast. You know what I mean? With comedy, it's just crazy. I think that about Conan all the time. I'm honestly so glad that he has a podcast because he gets to. I mean, I'm such a huge fan of Conan. We'll talk about that as we go, as we've already been talking about. But like,
Sure.
I've always thought that he. I don't know. It's so bizarre. He's just so fast. Sometimes it's like you get whiplash with his responses. Sometimes I'm like, how did he do that?
I know. I've always been in awe of how incredibly quick he is. And I was just listening to him interview Amy on Conan
Yes,
O'Brien
me
Needs
too.
a Plan.
I listened to that too. It was so
It
cute.
was so fun, and they obviously just get along so great, and they've always been such good friends. And I just love how they play off of each other, and it's just so great to hear her on that podcast finally. And yeah, Conan, it's funny. I don't remember a time when he would always come into the writers' room and just start doing a bit. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
never something serious about the show. Like we have to get more jokes for this sketch, and he would always come in like with his guitar, or he would come in with a little tweed cap on his head and just start doing a bit that had nothing to do with the show. That was just to make us all laugh. And so that was all I remember was when he would come into our office. It was like Andy Richter would be like, we'd be laughing, but also realize he's wasting everyone's time. But we were there till like midnight and nobody cared because we were laughing too hard. And
Yeah.
it was just again, I feel lucky beyond words to have worked, you know, for people like him and Stephen who create such a wonderful, family kind of atmosphere at the show the way Amy does. And, but yeah, Conan, I can't think of anybody just funnier off the cuff, riffing off
Mm-hmm.
people like in the street or something.
Well,
Or
that's why I like his podcast because I feel like he really gets time to be himself and
yes.
do his Conan thing, if that makes sense. Because I feel like the late night shows obviously were so great, and I do feel like sometimes to other people they were like I don't want to say niche, but some like to the broader American audience, I feel like sometimes the sketches were just like too out there or something for them, and it wasn't
Hmm.
like as commercial, if that's the word. And I was always mesmerized by that because I just kind of like to pick it apart a little bit, and it's just like weird and stupid and funny. And but I feel like that's why I like his podcast even more because I feel like he's getting a chance to really show what he can do so well, and you hear his sincerity as well as the comedy as well as
Hmm.
him actually digging in with his guests, which I think is something he didn't really get to do in late night, I feel.
Absolutely. It's great to hear him like talk for like 90 minutes to someone. Like, at our show, you'd usually get like a 5 minute chunk, maybe another 5 minute chunk, and they're
Mm-hmm.
usually promoting something.
Right.
And you can't really get into who the person is. And the podcast is, I think, an ideal format for him. Like, just
So good.
he gets to be himself and not censor himself and just be as zany and smart and hilarious. And like, I always loved how one of my favorite compliments he would give for our sketches would be, "That's so stupid," and that always meant stupid in a
It's
really
funny.
fun way. And like he's just the epitome of stupid, smart, smart, stupid. Like he loves the combination, the way the Monty Pythons did, where they would do a very intellectual sketch, but then they would do the fish slapping dance where literally someone's just getting hit with a fish and falling off a pier into the water. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's the best stuff. Sometimes it's that combination of dumb and smart that I've always loved about Conan, and that's the kind of work he likes the best.
Yeah, I mean, I that's what I loved about the Oscars too when he brought up the sandworm. I was like, this is quintessential Conan moment. Where half the
Absolutely.
audience is like, "What the fuck?" and half the audience is just there with him, and it was just I loved it.
I'm so glad you did. I did too, and it was very much. It really took me back to the silly that feeling of just having an insane character come out like Cactus Chef with the flute. At our show
Oh
we
my
just
god.
have a cactus with a chef's hat and a flute. Why not? And I love that kind of stuff. So I was so thrilled to see him being himself completely and doing what he thought was funny, and I loved it. So I'm glad it went over. It seemed to really make people really happy. And I think it was just what was called for,
I
this year.
agree. Oh my gosh, I agree. Well, and so okay, back to you though. I mean, how did you? get with Conan in the first place as far as getting your job there? I mean, because you were in Chicago first, and then you saw Amy move first.
Yeah, I was working at Second City. When I first got to Chicago, I was just doing improv purely on an amateur level for like about 4 years. I had done it first in grad school at University of Wisconsin, where actually one of the people in my first improv group in Madison was Chris Farley, who I and the first
Oh
time I
my
ever saw
god!
Stephen Colbert was in Chris's first touring company show at Second City. Stephen and Paul Danello, who works with us at Colbert, were in Chris's touring company. So that's the first time I saw them on stage. But
Wow.
then when I got out of grad school in '88, I started taking classes at Second City and Improv Olympic, and I got on a Herald team at Improv Olympic, started performing. But it wasn't until '92 that I got hired at Second City. And
Okay.
while I was touring around for a couple years before I got into the resident company, and Amy got into the touring company just as I was finishing touring. So I got to do a
Mm.
few road gigs with her, which was really fun. But she was an improv Olympic person too, and we used to do a show called the Armando Diaz Theatrical Experience in Hootenanny that Tina did, and Adam McKay, and Amy, and just a just a wonderful collection of people that I feel so lucky we got to do. It was on Monday nights because that's when Second City had the night off. So we would go
Okay.
down and just do this show, and it's the exact format ASCAT ended up being later at UCB, where you have a
Okay.
monologist who tells monologues and then scenes spin off of it. So we knew Amy really well in Chicago already, and like I said, she'd been offered a slot in our Second City cast, and they had left for New York in '96, and they had started doing bits at Conan, so they were already kind of in the camp. And when I got
Mm.
there, they already loved Amy, and they loved the rest of them. So they were like a repertory company. So I was thrilled that she did my first sketch because, but they were already kind of established as go-to players, for the show. And so yeah, and then they when they got the UCB sketch show, they didn't have as much time to do bits for us, but they would still
Mhm.
come back when they could. But I was so
Okay.
happy for them, and they got that sketch show on Comedy Central, and that was really fun to watch.
I used to watch was it Bravo? ASCAT was on Bravo or something. No, maybe it wasn't Bravo. It was some show or some channel that was kind of random,
Yeah,
right?
they did shoot a couple shows for, I believe it was for Bravo.
It was like Amy and Tina and wasn't it like not Moynihan. I want to say it was Bobby Moynihan, but it was somebody similar. I don't know. Or
I'm
maybe it
trying to
wasn't. I
remember
don't
who
know.
else did it. I think my friend Kevin Dorff might have done it, who was
Maybe so.
in, but it was the exact same format you would have seen if you came to UCB to see
I
us
thought
do
it was a
shows.
great show. I loved watching it because, well, I did Improv Olympic in LA when I lived there.
Oh
Rest
wow.
in peace. So I feel like I was really able to kind of get, and I mean, my origin story. Do you know who Neil Flynn is?
Yeah, Neil was in my cast at Second City.
No way! Oh
Yeah.
my god, he is my improv origin story. When I watched Scrubs, like they just gave him so much to work with, and I was like, that was not scripted, and I could tell. And then towards the end, I was doing all my research. This is such a tangent. I'm sorry, but
No, it's
improv is
great.
so
I'll talk about
wonderful.
Neil all night.
Oh my gosh. Well, so they started giving him random stuff in the interviews I heard that they would like write stuff in the script like let Neil speak or just some random vague thing.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of mesmerized by how you could do that and how talented he was at that because again, like any improv person that we're, in awe of, I just feel like they're so smart and so fast and so the story is very cohesive even though they're just making it up off the top of their head. And so I was like, let me learn about this. And so that's kind of my improv like origin, I feel, which got me into, all the other ASCAD Armandos, like, Heralds and all that kind of stuff. Which is so amazing to hear that that's where a lot of people started out. But yeah, I loved it. I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah, Neil was such so fun to work with at Second City, and I had done some shows with him before working with him at Second City, like at Improv Olympic and things like that. And one thing I love about Neil is he looks like a cop or a first baseman. He has that kind of just man's man look, but he also has the silliest sense of humor. I've never met a sillier person, and I mean that as the highest compliment.
Yeah.
And so when a something insanely silly comes out of Neil's like cop face, it's 10 times funnier. It's like
Yes.
when Steven looks like an investment banker. So when he says something really zany or hilarious, it's 10 times funnier, because it's like
Right. It's
getting in.
total
It's
opposite of
like,
what your brain is doing.
yeah, it's like subversive. It kind of sneaks in and lulls you into like you're going to see something normal, and then it throws you a curveball. And Neil would, he's just got the most amazing zany sense of humor. And I love him. So I'm not surprised he was. And I love that. Yeah, when he started with Scrubs, I think it wasn't necessarily supposed to be a big part at all, and it grew just from him being a brilliant improviser. And I was so thrilled for him. And then when he got to do the middle too,
Mm-hmm.
he was actually
He
a
just
groomsman in my wedding too.
no
Yeah,
way.
yeah. So
Oh my god.
yeah, he's yeah, I love Neil.
Yeah, he just made a guest appearance in Shrinking, the new show
Oh, I have to see
that
that.
yeah, it's on Apple TV because Bill Lawrence, who created Scrubs, also created that show,
Right, that's right.
Shrinking. But okay, but wait. So did you like? How does getting a job with Conan's team happen? Like, do you have to submit something, or what did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're totally off from your
No,
original
no,
topic.
no. This is good.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, yeah, it was very unusual in my case. I was working at Second City, and this is such a crazy story, but one of the writers at Conan, Tommy Blacha, had broken his leg really badly, and it was before Zoom, so he couldn't even come into work. He was like laid up at home, and they were like, we should probably have someone come out for like 13 weeks and fill in for Tommy. And some of the guys like Andy Richter and Tommy and Brian McCann and Greg Cohen knew my work from Chicago and thought, hey, why don't we ask Brian to submit some ideas to see if maybe they can bring him out for 13 weeks? And I sort of threw some ideas together in a packet. I wish I had stuff all ready to go, but I kind of threw stuff together. Luckily, they liked it enough to bring me out for what they thought was just going to be a 13-week fill-in gig. And then, like I said, thankfully, they liked the stuff I was doing, including Andy's little sister with Amy. So I
Was that part of your packet, or was that what you
no,
first?
it wasn't. It was
Mm.
honestly, they had saved a slot for another sketch idea I had, and I didn't know what to do with that. And I remember sitting there thinking, what would be fun to see? Like, what would be fun? And then I just started thinking, what if Andy had a sister who had a crush on Conan, and if when he politely says, I'm a little old for you, and I have a girlfriend, but I'm really
Yeah.
flattered, and what if she just became apocalyptically enraged, like
Yes.
and just lost her temper at him, and then Amy just turned it into a very simple idea like that into this very memorable sketch with her performance. And one of the things I feel so bad about looking back on it, she never complained about this, by the way, but I was so new and dumb at the show that I thought if we used cue cards, the audience would read all the jokes in advance. And so I said, Amy, is it okay if you just memorize this? And it included like these big speeches and stuff. And she just did it.
Wow.
She didn't. And we always use cue cards at Conan. Like it was for everything. I was so new though that, and she said, sure, I'll do it. No problem, Brian. And so for her to do that kind of level of performance while also having to remember everything, and sometimes we make changes right up till showtime, and
Yeah.
she just nailed it. And I mean, she can obviously do anything, but that looking back, I feel so bad that I made her do that. But she didn't even blink when I asked her to do it
Oh my
without cue cards.
gosh.
And but I'm sorry, Amy.
That is so amazing. Actually just went back and watched some of the Andy's little sister sketches, and the most recent one I saw, recent one for me, probably not the most recent one, was, I mean, they're all doing this, but when Andy's leaving, I think, and she says that she wants to be the sidekick,
Oh, that's
and
right.
and so it's Conan kind of letting her down gently and just being like, you're a little young and you still have things to do. But then they go get a milkshake afterwards. But the thing that I love seeing, because I don't even know if I saw as much on SNL. She did a lot. But what I really loved seeing Amy do in that one was just the physicality of it. Like jumping on tables, jumping around in the audience, knocking over Andy and Conan, jumping on Conan.
Oh, Yeah, I
It
love that
was just
he.
such a different aspect because I'm so used to seeing her. I feel with Parks and recent SNL. I feel so it was so nice to see her in her lane of when she was like younger and a younger performer. It's so cool to see.
I love that Conan brought that up in their Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend episode too. How that she's so good with physical stuff, even though
Oh
you don't see
yeah.
her do it very often. She like when she hit Andy on a dead run, running down the stairs as
Oh
Stacy,
my god.
and just hit him like Conan said. She leaped like a leopard, and she really did. She hit him on a full run. And I just did Andy's podcast, and he told me something I had never heard him say. But he said it's so funny when Amy hit me and I fell back. I got a perfect chiropractic adjustment on my back. Like he said, his
Oh
back
my
like goes
god.
crack. He's like, "Oh, nice little
That
hidden
feels good.
benefit there." So, but I just love that she is utterly fearless and has no ego. For someone who's obviously a beautiful person inside and out. She has no vanity or ego. If something's funny, she'll put weird stuff on her face, or like she just if it'll help the piece, she'll do it.
Mhm.
She's a total team player. She's a star
Well, what
and a
else?
team player, and that's why I think Parks. One thing I always loved, I would
Yeah.
watch Amy do scenes in Parks, and if it called for the other person in the scene to shine, she just served them. Like put it was like hitting a volleyball set. Like just puts the ball up for them to spike it. Whether it's Aubrey or Nick or anyone or Adam Scott or anybody she was doing scenes with, she would just set that ball up. And when it was her turn to spike, she would spike the hell out of it.
Ugh.
But I love how she would set other people up and just play things really grounded and real, and it made everyone around her better. And she's always done that.
A true improviser, man.
Yeah,
That's what they do. Is like make everyone else look so good.
yeah. That's what we always were taught when we were coming up. That make your partner look good, and you'll look good yourself, and that's really true. And
Yeah.
I think all
She
the
kind of
best.
reminded me. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying all the best performers learn that. If they don't know it instinctively, they discover that in their early classes.
Yeah, because it makes them better too. It makes them look really good as well, which is kind of all anybody wants too, and just to have the team working together. It's so good.
Yeah, and I think that
Um,
I love how they carried that spirit into these ensemble comedies like Parks, and that's why I think the set felt like such an ensemble, and nobody felt more important than anybody else. At least
yeah,
when I was there, and everybody I've ever talked to that worked on the show, or they just got that impression from everyone around, and like the writers could come up and suggest something. Uh, if the prop guy had a good idea, they would listen
yeah,
to it. They're like, "Hey, that's a really good idea. Hey,
that's
what
really
if we,
funny. Yeah,
we did? What if we try this?" Nobody was like discouraged from tossing in an idea or anything, and I love
right.
that. They're like, if it's good idea, it can come from anywhere. It can come from the hair and makeup people, whatever, or the
Right.
guy who's holding the boom mic.
Yeah, totally. And it almost I just keep harping on the physicality of it too, because that's something like I feel like that's such a goal or a dream of mine to be able to feel like more comfortable with that, which like in most cases I am, but that's just a level of fearlessness that you've got to get. And I always think of her, well, now she's like included because I've always thought of Molly Shannon as like the top physical, like just do whatever is necessary for the scene.
Yeah,
And so when I saw Amy do Andy's little sister, I was like, oh my God, they are true queens. I feel.
they really are. And I love when I watch someone like, yeah, Amy, Molly Shannon, they're perfect. And Melissa McCarthy's another one who
Oh my
will
gosh,
do,
yes.
like, she will just like, I don't know if you saw that SNL sketch recently where she was like just
The
rubbing her
window,
vest
yeah.
on the window and just absolutely. And that, and I love that she's often given a hat tip to Farley too, like in what an influence he was
Totally.
on her physicality, and she would have been brilliant anyway without that influence. But I love that she, gives him some props as someone who inspired her early on, which I love that.
Yeah. So then how did it work out for the after the 13 weeks was up? Did they come to you and say, "Well, we're going to just keep you," or how did that work out?
Yeah, they kept telling me we want to keep you. We don't know if we'll be able to. And I think it helped at the time that NBC was doing pretty well. They had like ER and Law and Order, and
Mhm.
I think yeah, and Friends. So they were doing well enough that for a Writers Guild minimum writer to stay on, it Conan thankfully, sold the idea to NBC and said, "Hey, we like what Brian's doing. We'd like to hang on to him." And I'll always be grateful because I would have been grateful just to work there for 13 weeks because I had such a great time. But to get to work there for 18 years with all those people and all the later, people that came in and came through, just so many wonderful performers and so many people like Andy Daly and, just all these wonderful people that came in and did bits for us later on. And interns I met, like some of our interns, it's crazy. Like I mentioned, Katie Dippold and Jen Statsky, who wrote at Parks, but we had John Krasinski was an intern of ours, and Mindy Kaling and Ellie Kemper, and just Mike Birbiglia was an intern my first year. And our internship had nothing to do with their later success, but they were really excited to see them go on and do these amazing things.
Yeah. Well, it might have because I feel like when you're an intern, you get to just be in the environment, and sometimes that is more helpful than anything to really see how the machine works.
That's true. I like to think that they got some inspiration in some ways,
Totally.
and I had been an intern myself, in college, not at a big, late night show or anything, but just at local Chicago stations. And I always remember feeling really appreciating it when someone at least didn't just look at me like I was invisible, like just kind of acknowledge that I was a human being. They
Yeah.
didn't have to learn my name or anything, but just that you weren't just like a cloud of vapor, to them. And so I always tried to remember that, and like if the interns had questions, to try to answer them because I remember having so many questions myself. And so I'm so grateful that I've gotten to, like, it's so great when they come back and be guests on the show or something. Like Krasinski was on recently, and it's just so fun to just, I'm like, man, he's huge. Like
Yeah.
he's a huge star. And I remember just being this nice, intern guy who would bring in the paperwork and stuff. And um, but yeah, I'm so grateful that it turned into 18 years there. And I'm so grateful for the 10 years I've gotten to work at Stephen's show too.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think back on how it was really supposed to be 13 weeks, I'm just grateful beyond words for all the years I got to do it.
Amazing. Did they bring that other guy back? Did he come back and
Yeah,
keep you?
yeah, Tommy.
So,
Yeah, because that was the thing. Like Tommy, who's one of the funniest people I've ever met. Actually, Tommy did the gaseous wiener. I don't know if you remember that character, or
oh, I
he
don't
did a
remember that
bunch of
one.
silly characters at Conan. Um, but Tommy was another guy who came out of Chicago and was always just had such a wonderful, like, anarchy in what he did. Like, and he brought so much anarchy into the office late at night. Like he would just throw things out the window onto Sixth Avenue and
Yeah.
just he would bring such a wonderful sense of insane play, to the
Right.
office that I think really served the show. And
Right.
so I'm grateful that I got to work with Tommy for a few years. And then John Glazer came in later,
Yeah.
which was wonderful. And Kevin Dorff, who was also on Parks and in an episode at the bowling alley and things like that.
Yeah.
He and Glazer, I love that Councilman Jam became such a huge character. But
Oh my
John and I
gosh.
were hired at Second City the exact same day, in late '92, and I we've always and then to get to work with him later at Conan, and then I just had brunch with him a few weeks ago, and it's great to see him. I don't see him as much as I'd like to, but I loved working with him all those years
Yeah.
at Conan too. And
He's so good.
yeah,
He's
he's
so
just,
good.
it's so funny too. Like he, for being a really nice guy, he's one of my favorite actors to play
A terrible
assholes.
person.
Like
Oh
like,
my gosh, the more we analyze the show, we're just like, Jam sucks.
oh
But
yeah,
Glazer love. We love Glazer.
exactly. You love him, and I love like how much like Adam Scott would just rave about Glazer, and just like he's such a delightful asshole, and it's
Yeah.
just it's the best. And even when he created Delocated on Adult Swim, a very very
Oh
funny
yeah,
show.
uh-huh.
Yeah, I love that John creates the show. Who else would create a show for himself to star in and then put a ski mask over his face, disguise his voice, and make himself an asshole?
Oh my god.
It was such a brilliant show. And John, again, an egoless guy who just wants things to be funny. And but he was great. And it's so fun too that, like, I remember when Aziz was starting out in
Mhm.
at UCB, just kind of always doing shows though. Like I've always admired the work ethic of all these people. This going back to Tina and Adam McKay and stuff in Chicago too. That Aziz and John Mulaney seem to have this too, where they were always just doing stuff. You know, they were
Hmm.
just sure they had ambition, but they were doing stuff as an end in itself first, like just doing shows that they thought were fun and let's just do fun stuff. And if you just do that, I think it's more likely to become a means to an end and things happen for them. And you know, I'm just so it was such a thrill too to meet. Like I didn't know Chris Pratt at all. I'd never met him, and he was very nice. And it was funny. The first episode I did, I remember this really clearly. He had just gotten cast in Guardians of the Galaxy. He had just found out,
Okay.
and I didn't know him, but I had just done a scene with him, and I said, "Oh, I just couldn't help overhearing you got cast in Guardians of the Galaxy. Congratulations!" And he goes, "Yeah, thanks." He goes, "I got to lose 40 pounds."
I know, which the timing makes total sense because when you were on was the end of season 5, and season 6 of Parks is when they make the joke that he just stopped drinking beer. So that's how
Oh,
he lost all of his weight.
yeah, they had to justify it, and
Yes.
but I remember him saying that like he was excited, but he was also like a little daunted at the fact that hey, I
Right.
gotta burn this off.
Yeah, and Pratt was another one like Neil Flynn where he was only supposed to be on there for 6 episodes as Anne's love
Oh,
interest. And then they just loved him so much that they were like, we should probably try to give him more stuff to do. And then it just worked out so well.
that's wonderful. I didn't know that, but yeah,
Hmm.
I'm not surprised that he'd be one of those guys you just keep writing for, like with Ben Schwartz, who I also knew from Ben Schwartz did like some little bits for us, like at Conan many years ago, like when he was maybe even still in college, um, but like John Ralphio, I don't think was supposed to be as big a
Right.
character, you know, and it was just like I heard him on a podcast recently, and he was saying like Michael Schur just came up. The guys, oh, you'll definitely be back, like because
Love
it was so
that.
obvious, you know, how funny the character
I mean,
was,
talk
and
about an improviser. Ben Schwartz can just, I feel, riff on anything, about anything. I mean, so many things were either not scripted or they were scripted, but they had no idea that it was going to turn out the way that it did just because Ben Schwartz put life to it, just like Amy Poehler, I guess, did with Andy's little sister. But yeah, I don't think he was supposed to be on for as much as he was, but everyone just loved it so much. I mean, he was fully formed when he came out because most of the time it's like you're working up to the character, but that first episode you're like, you know exactly who this guy is. His hair, everything was just ready to go.
yeah, and I heard him say on this podcast, which was kind of amazing, that if he didn't know Katie Dippold, the, his agent had said, like, I guess Parks had called to ask him if he would play this little part, and someone at his agent's office said, no, no, Ben wouldn't be interested.
Wow.
And the only way he found out that that happened, he said, was because he ran into Katie, and she said, "Oh, you know, I don't know if there was something in the part that you know maybe turned you off or something." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, you said you didn't want to do the part." And he's like, "I'll do anything on that
I
show. I
never said
love
that.
it." He's like, "What are you talking about?" So he said if he didn't know Katie, he wouldn't have found out that someone just spoke out of turn, you know,
I hate hearing stories like that. But it's
and
also great that
luckily,
like you they knew each other, so that's good.
yeah, so luckily it worked out, and he was obviously the perfect guy for that part and turned it into something so great. But I gotten to do a few improv shows with Ben over the years, and he's just yeah, he's
Amazing.
brilliant and a wonderful guy too.
Well, how did you start doing characters on Conan? Like, where is it kind of like SNL where you write stuff and then you cast it too, or does Conan decide, or who decides who's going to actually be the character? You know what I mean?
Well, one of the wonderful things that Conan and Robert Smigel brought over from SNL was something that they have there is the writer. If you write something and it gets approved and greenlit, you kind of produce the whole thing. So the writer is kind of in charge of the piece. So if it lives or dies, at least it's what you kind of envisioned it would be. So
Sure.
they trust you to cast it, call the wardrobe, call the graphics department. You kind of produce your whole piece. And you can ask like advice, like say, "Hey, what do you think about this person for that?" Or you know, it's very collaborative. But the writers are kind of in charge of the piece. So like we cast Amy in that bit because when I talked to John Groff, the head writer, we were like, yeah, I think if Amy could look 13, she'd be the performance would be so great. We know that. So but yeah, and when I would do characters, sometimes I would write stuff and I'd be like, you know what, I think McCann should do this because he's got much more like he's much funnier when he's yelling or something, like if
Mm-hmm.
it's an angry character or something, or we'd have our friend Eddie Pepitone if it was an angry guy in the audience. But then other times I'd be like, I think I could have some fun doing this character, like when I wrote Artie Kendall, the ghost crooner. I just
Yes.
I just thought it would be fun to just be an old Bing Crosby type crooner. So I was like, I think I could probably try this. And then other times, sometimes people would suggest me for characters, like the traveling salesman Hannigan that I used to
Mm-hmm.
do. Andrew Weinberg originally suggested that we try a salesman character, and then Michael Coman and I and Andrew wrote up the salesman sketch, and it got more and more bizarre. And same with the interrupter, this other character I did a late night
Yeah.
who would interrupt Conan and dress like kind of a musketeer. Um,
Finish all his sentences.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And Michael Coman and I would write those together, and he was like, I think he might have picked out the crazy outfit for me, like it said, "Hey, what if you dress like a
It
cape,
was like
like
Count
you're almost like
Dracula or
a."
something,
Yeah,
kind of.
exactly. It is very much like that, and so yeah, it really depended. Like there'd be a lot of times where I'd be like, we should play this. Is like I remember writing a sketch once where there was a tough guy in the audience who was kind of being too controlling of his girlfriend. Jamie
Mm-hmm.
Denbo was playing the girlfriend, and Rob Riggle, who at the time was just doing stuff at UCB. I'm like, oh, Rob would be perfect for that because he looks like a guy, even though he's the nicest guy in the world, he looks like a guy who could boss people around and like
Sure.
be kind of a controlling boyfriend. So sometimes, you just look at the energy people can carry off, and yeah, and that was one of the delightful things about the UCB community at the time is there were so many people that you'd see on stage and just be like, oh, they'd be perfect. And I remember Jason Mantzoukas, was another guy
Oh,
coming
sure.
up at the time. And Jason's another guy who has, uh, and rightfully so, gained this reputation as someone who can bring so much through improvising to a scene that wasn't even on the script. Like I
Mm-hmm.
did one little tiny scene in Baby Mama with Amy and Tina, and I was in the little support group scene, where
Mm-hmm.
they were kind of everyone with their surrogates were in the support group scene with that Sigourney Weaver was leading, and Jason. Almost everything he says in that scene was completely improvised.
Wow, that's great to know.
Where he's just like, it's just me, and he's just like, I'm worried the baby's going to be fat, and he's like, and that I don't remember any of that being in the script, and
Oh my god.
it was so and then he eventually he got a reputation for that, and people would call him in kind of expecting him to do that, which
Oh
I
my
think he was
gosh.
happy to do. But it's funny how if word gets out that hey, this guy's going to make
That
stuff
you can
better,
do that. Yeah,
and
him as Dennis
Jason's.
Fine scene is just insane. He's another one of those characters too, where I'm just like, love Jason Mantzoukas, hate Dennis Feinstein,
Yeah, exactly. He's horrible. Yeah, and I love that.
but he's so funny at the same time. Like, I mean, I can't imagine all of that. Like you said, I mean, actually, that's a lie. I can't imagine all of it being written just because the writing staff is so great. But I feel like a lot of it was, probably improvised as well.
Absolutely, and I love how different people like you talk about Jason being really a nice guy and playing an asshole, Glazer playing an asshole, and Aubrey, like I knew Aubrey a little bit before. She did like this ESPN web series with my wife Miriam called Main
Oh,
Street, Mayne. That Miriam was in one episode of that. The Glazer was in too. Actually, it's on YouTube if you want to check it out. It's really fun.
okay, I
But
will.
Aubrey was she's incredibly sweet,
Yeah.
as a person. But a lot of times people are like, I'm always kind of struck when people say, I'd be afraid to meet Aubrey Plaza because she seems really like
All her
intimidating and
characters are a
stuff.
little standoffish, huh?
Yeah, but she's the furthest thing from that. She's just
Yeah.
such a sweet person, and just with a big heart and incredibly kind. But she
Love that.
has that she'll just stare. Her character. So many of her characters are very intimidating and kind of they'll stare you down and kind of judge you. But that's
Mhm.
not what she's like. So I love how different so many of the characters are from who they are. Leslie Knope is maybe a much more idealistic version of Amy, but there's a lot of Amy in there. Just a
Totally.
lot of the sweetness and the and Adam Scott, has been there's a lot of him there, obviously. But I love the characters that are nothing like the people.
Mhm. I know, me too. Well, I mean, and your characters, I will say, I did watch that last like little tribute thing that Conan did, which on your last day, which where you played the interrupter,
Oh, right.
and
Oh,
that
thank
was
you for
just like,
watching.
oh my gosh, I went on a deep dive today.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very
It
sweet.
was so great. I loved it so much, and it was really interesting. Just like with Amy, I feel it's so interesting to see Amy and you play kind of a real person, if you will, on Parks, and then like the character heightened versions in these different roles. But I was gonna ask, did you write that last little bit with him and with you and Conan with the interrupter, and because that last line, what I feel like I wrote it down. It was something like, "Oh yeah, you guys were switching back and forth between being the interrupter, where he was being the interrupter too, and
All
then he was
right.
like, so maybe it's time to,' and then you interrupt and say goodbye, and I was like, that is so beautiful."
Oh,
And I was just wondering who wrote that, because was that you or did someone else write that for you?
I think I think I wrote that. I may have. It's hard to remember. That was 10 years ago,
I
and I know
know.
I worked on it. And I
Maybe
know
it was a collab.
I might. Yeah, it might have been a collab. I wrote the original interrupter bits with Michael Coman, as I said, but Michael wasn't at the TBS show, so I think it might have been Todd Levin might have helped with it a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a very it was such a lovely surprise that they put together that montage for me,
Yeah.
and I did not expect such a sweet send off, and it was very bittersweet because I never, as much as I always wanted to go work with Stephen, and I always had hoped to work with Stephen in some way because I've been one of Stephen Colbert's biggest fans since the old Chicago days. He's such a genius, but it was never a question of wanting to stop working with Conan. I loved working with Conan from
Right.
the first day to the last day. So it was very bittersweet to leave, and even though I was excited for the new challenge and the fun of working with Stephen.
Did you have Colbert before you left Conan, or like is that where the transition happened? Does that
Well,
make
my
sense?
it was a combination of things. Like I'd always had wanted to work with Stephen at some point, and then also my family kind of been feeling a real pull back to New York,
Oh, sure.
and Stephen said, he was kind enough to say, we'd love to have you if it's okay with Conan. We wouldn't want to do it any other way, and I wouldn't have either. And Conan couldn't have been nicer about it. He was
Hmm.
so sweet and given his blessing to say, I just thanks for everything, and this is still, this will always be, a family for you and everything. But like, I totally understand, and so they were incredibly nice about it, and they were the fact that Conan and Steven are friends really was a nice thing, and they are they're very good friends, which really helped.
Yeah.
And
Did
it's
you know
funny.
Colbert before though? Like,
What's that?
Were you friends with Colbert before, or like did you
I
know him before?
I knew Steven from back in the Second City days,
Oh, that's right. Duh.
but
Yeah.
I didn't know him super well. He was one of my favorite performers though at Second City. He was so incredibly smart and funny, and he was in the cast with Steve Carell and Amy Sedaris and Paul Danello, who works with us now as one of the producers at our show. And they were when I started in the touring company where we go around in the van and stuff. They were in the main stage company, so they were, even though Steven's basically my age, they all seemed like the cool kids at the cool older kids in high school,
Yeah.
and because they were so good, and I'd been a huge fan of his since I first saw him with in Farley's touring company that one night. So I'd always known how great he was, but I
Sure.
didn't really get to know him until I got hired at Second City. But they were always so nice to us, even when they had no reason to be. Like we were just these new people that couldn't do anything for them. But like, I remember Steven would come in and say, "Oh, you're gonna go do the ski tour? You're going to like Colorado? You got to go to this place and eat at this place, And like
Mhm.
they were just really, they're exactly the same now. Like you run into Carell these days, he's just as sweet as like I just saw he paid for the prom tickets for.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too. That's so
Yeah, and
cute.
that's just who these people are. Like Steven is incredibly generous too, and just like Conan and Amy, and they're the same. They're much more successful than they were in Chicago, obviously, but they were always really. They're the same people. Like they were
Yeah.
super nice then, super fun to work with, and they still are.
So did you reach out to somebody on Steven's team, or like how'd that all work out as far as switching sides? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not
I
switching
basically,
sides. I don't want to say that. That's not what I mean.
well, I just kind of basically reached out and just said, would there be any interest in working together at some point? And they said that they because we've been feeling a pull back to New York, and I'd always hoped to work with Stephen in some way. And they said, hey, if it's okay with Conan, we'd love to
Okay.
have you. So and that was pretty much it. So they
Because
were
you had probably had Steven's like information and whatnot to like be able to reach out with him and keep in touch and stuff like that,
yeah, and
right?
like Tom Purcell, who's one of our executive producers, I'd been in touch with, and
Sure.
Tom's a great guy. He was another Second City guy. That So we were all part of that. We were all kind of in foxholes together in Chicago, when none of us had any money or anything, and just the bonding that happens in those communities, it's
Big
amazing. Like
deal.
that, like Stephen often jokes about times where he and Paul and Amy would come back from a touring company show and they wouldn't have any money for food. Like
Oh my gosh.
they would, and Amy would be like, I think I've got some chicken. If we can get
The
some
life.
lemons, I can make lemon chicken. And they had Stephen joked about once paying for a bus ride with pennies because he had a jar of pennies and he knew they had to take them, and he poured a bunch of pennies into the thing. And so we were all struggling, but I look back on it as a wonderful time. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't really, nobody was complaining because we were all working with wonderful people. And I think it would have been hard if we'd had kids at the time.
Sure, sure.
But that would have made it a little hard. But most of us we were getting by okay.
Were any of your characters from Second City transferred over to Conan or Colbert, I guess now? But I mean, like the singing guy, like was that built at Conan?
The only character I remember doing at Second City, and it didn't end up in a show. That was the only reason I was kind of felt okay about doing it on Conan. Was one of my early characters named Bath Time Bob, who was like the hygiene cowboy who would come into people's bathrooms and sing about how it's important to scrub a dub and like get a good bath. But he would burst into people's bathrooms and they're like, "Get the hell out of my house!"
Yeah.
But he's like, and so that was like one of the only characters I remember. Now and then, characters from improv shows would come in. Like I remember doing an AssCat show once where I played a character that turned out to be a zombie priest, and I remember Steven was doing the AssCat with us that night. This was like late '90s in Chicago, an AssCat show, and everybody's like, "Oh, you should bring that back." But sometimes I wasn't the right person to play something
Mm-hmm.
that I did. Like there was another time I did a scene at AssCat, a really mild mannered new prisoner in a maximum security wing who's like, "Hey guys, I'm new here, but I'm taking over." That kind of guy. But he's like clearly not taking over anything. And I
Right.
thought I shouldn't do this. Jack McBrayer should do this because Jack was kind of new in New York and we loved him. And I was like, Jack's the perfect guy to come in and go, "Hey guys, I'm new here, but I'm taking over." And
That's
he
so
gets killed
true.
immediately. Like these huge convicts just hit him with barbells. And I remember that was, I think, when Conan fell completely in love with Jack. Like that was Jack's first bit, I'm proud to say. And
Amazing.
Conan said, "That guy got killed so fast." And Jack, I remember as he's getting killed, he's like flopping, and he made
Right.
again a guy who makes everything funnier. And
Oh my god.
Jack, right from the start, was beloved, and he ended up being in things every week, because he was so fun, and you could just plug Jack into anything.
Yeah, totally. Well, and so I mean, a lot of the well, not a lot. I guess two of the characters that I saw had, well, including the singer guy and the salesman were kind of like this transatlantic like 1920s vibes, and I'm like, is that one of your fave characters to play, or did that just kind of happen?
Honestly, Holly, I think that came from my love of old movies like The Thin Man and
Oh, okay.
My Man Godfrey. Those William Powell sort of ways of talking, that sort of,
Yes.
that's it. I think that unconsciously, I wasn't consciously doing William Powell or doing that kind of mid-Atlantic accent, but I think that came from my love of old screwball comedies and that sort of old-timey way of talking, that sort of thing. Like,
Totally.
hey, check this out. You're gonna
Did
love
you
this,
write the
pal.
melodies too
Oh,
for
yeah.
the
Oh, the
singing?
melody.
Sorry.
It's funny that the odd thing about that was I not being a songwriter. I basically just it was basically just a limerick,
I
and
mean, it worked.
and I think some of the melody might have come too from when I did Bath Time Bob. in Chicago. Jeff Richmond, who's now married to Tina Fey,
Yep.
and was her boyfriend at the time and later husband. He was our musical director in our Second City cast, and he was so brilliant. And I think some of that melody might have even been originally from Jeff's. Jeff might have even tossed in the original melody for that song when we were at Second City. I wish I could remember. But
It's okay.
Jeff brought in so many genius musical ideas. He wrote an entire musical number for us at our cast that was just amazing about all these old people that sit all these old guys sitting on a bench trying to top each other with their cancer stories.
Oh
and
my
um, and
God.
I think one thing I admired so much about Jeff too is we had been sitting around saying, what are some things you can't write funny jokes or sketches about? And we were like, well, one is, cancer. There's no way to make that funny. Just kind of tossing out topics that there's no way you can make a funny sketch about. And Jeff, I think, took it as a personal challenge and went
Yeah,
home
you're like,
and,
I'll show you. See?
yeah, and in a very humble way, brought in this incredible musical number about guys topping each other with, like, he got the cancer, that kind of thing.
Oh
And
my.
it was just amazing. And Jeff, obviously is absolutely brilliant and wrote up the music for 30 Rock and
I
for
love
Mean Girls
the
and
music for
everything.
30
He's
Rock. It's so
incredible,
good.
and again, such a nice guy.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, and one of my favorite parts about Artie is the character is like saying something really offensive and then just ending it with "ba-da-da-do-boop-bop." It's like I was literally like gut laughing at a lot of the women ones too, just because
Oh,
like I mean, obviously being a fan of Leslie Knope, I am such a feminist, and so hearing those, that just made me laugh really.
I always try to make it clear that he got murdered by the League of Women
Right.
Voters and like that he deserved to be murdered. And like, I definitely never wanted to give the impression that I was condoning anything he was
Right.
saying. I
That's
always
exactly
wanted to make
no.
it clear that he was a complete monster. And,
That came across very well. No, it
oh,
totally did.
good.
And Conan has that line too where he's like, I'm surprised you weren't murdered. And Artie's like, I was.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, yeah, it was very fun. The little toss ins at the end, I think, grew after. I don't even know if I did that in the first time I did it, but I started. It felt like it needed something right at the end of the song, and most of those were ad libs because it would be like Hitlery who or whatever. Like it would be a verse about Hitler, and I would just be like, I got to say something at the end of the verse, so it'd just be like Hitlery
It's
or
so
like
funny.
ploppity drown, or
Did you? Oh
whatever. I
my
would just
God.
those kind of just evolved the more I did it, and
Yeah, the
it
more
was very
comfortable you
silly. But
got.
those were just kind of just little tags on the songs.
Oh my God, it's so funny. And were you writing all of those, or by the end of it, were people picking up and writing stuff for you?
I wrote all the Crooner Ghost songs, but
Okay.
the other stuff I tended to write a lot of other stuff with other people. Like I did write sometimes I would write sketches on my own, but my favorite times were bouncing ideas off around, like writing The Salesman with Andrew Weinberg or Michael Coman, or writing The Interrupter with Michael, or like those are my favorite things. Are like some of my favorite memories are we wouldn't have a sketch for the next day, and it would be like 1 a.m. and we were just sleep deprived and desperate.
Yeah.
And sometimes those would be the most silly ideas that none of us would have thought of on our own. Like when we did this ridiculous group, the Slipnuts, this group
Oh
of guys.
yeah, with Glazer, right?
What's that?
With Glazer.
Yeah, it
Glazer
was
did that one.
Glazer. It was me, John Glazer, and Andy Blitz. And that came up. We didn't have a sketch. It was the night before. It was around 1 a.m. And we're like, what are we gonna do tomorrow? We don't have anything in the middle of the show. And we saw the band Slipknot was on the show the next day. This really hardcore heavy metal band.
You're right,
And we're
right.
like, what if there's like accidentally a group that's booked, a goofy comedy group that's real collegiate and corny that's called, I don't know, the Slip Nuts. And we're like, well, what do they do? Well, they slip on nuts and they sing about slipping on nuts. And we're like, all right, let's just let's just do that tomorrow. And that was honestly that was something that none of us sitting by ourselves would have come up with. So a lot of my favorite stuff was collaborative. The crooner was one of the few things I remember writing entirely on my own. But most of the other stuff, I'd say a lot of my favorite stuff I did was collaborative.
What
With
about
others.
do you remember doing Drunk Dumbledore?
Oh yes, that I think might have been Andre Dubuchet's idea.
That
But I
was hilarious.
Oh, thank you. That was very fun. Yeah, I think Andre had the idea of a Dumbledore because Harry Potter had done really well at the box office, that he had turned into a Hollywood asshole, and like,
Oh,
and
that makes so much sense.
like he's just like we went and shot one of the scenes at the Standard Hotel on Sunset Boulevard, which is a total hipster haven, which you probably, I don't know if you've ever been in there, but I certainly would
I've never
never have
been in
been
there.
allowed in there. I'm not nearly cool enough. And and I remember being just being out on the pool deck, and I had to jump into the pool screaming and get arrested by cops, fake cops, actors.
Right.
But and it was so funny. I jumped into the pool dressed as Dumbledore, and the cops uh, were arresting me. And there was a woman who called down to the front desk who said, "There's a angry drunk man dressed as a wizard." Like, who's screaming like, "Will someone please take care of that?" Like, I was like, "Oh, there's just regular people living in this hotel, and like they have no idea what's going on." So
Like, you don't get it, okay?
yeah, and I don't blame her for being upset. She like paid to stay in that hotel, and there's a screaming Dumbledore. But that was really fun, and I remember I had to pull up in a Porsche, and like I'm super
Right.
drunk, and I'm
With
I'm
your
like
like
hitting
bottle
on
in your
women,
hand.
and we did
Yeah.
another one in a really hip nightclub that I never would have been let into either. Just like there were like these women dressed like cats who were climbing on a net in the ceiling. I was like, I do not belong here. I take me to a Irish pub
Oh
in a
my
tweed
god.
coat.
Well, did you ever want to audition for SNL? Because so much of what you did is what SNL was doing too. You know what I mean?
Thanks for asking, Holly. I actually did audition in '95, and
Okay.
I was working at Second City, and they came to town and they scouted a bunch of us, and they had several of us come out and audition. And I tell young people this all the time, like if they dream of being on a show like that, have stuff you can do by yourself to camera, because I did not have anything. Everything I did was collaborative and ensemble. I always was working with other people. I didn't have any material that I could do by myself to camera, just one
Mhm.
person. So I threw some stuff together, and it was okay. But I did a little bit of Sean Connery, and that got like a nice response and stuff. But I didn't really. Miriam, my wife Miriam, was actually flown out twice, and she was very close to getting it. But it was that was the year that Will Ferrell and our friend Dave Kackner from Chicago, and Nancy Walls, who's now married to Steve Carell. So I was very happy for them that they got the show. But I think in retrospect, it given the kind of work we did at Conan, like I think I was suited in many ways to being a little more under the radar and a little more like at Conan there wasn't nearly as much scrutiny or spotlight on what we did, so we could kind of, in a way, it was I don't know if I could have handled the, even though I know a lot of my favorite people thrived at SNL, and I'm so happy for them, including Amy and Tina and Adam McKay and all these wonderful people, Rachel Dratch, all these other Chicago friends of ours. um, I'm so happy for them, but I don't know if I could have handled it.
It sounds so intense.
It feels like it might have been I don't know if I personally had would have been strong enough for that level of
Yeah.
scrutiny and spotlight. But it was the dream job for everyone I worked with. It's where it was what we all dreamed of doing when we were. But I never thought I would ever get an opportunity to audition for it, so I didn't have stuff ready to go. And that's what I tell people: you have stuff that you've tested in front of an audience that you can do by yourself, and believe
Mhm.
in yourself enough to think maybe I'll get that opportunity, and have stuff ready to go, because
Right.
like that's what you're going to be asked to do. You're going to be asked to do like several characters by yourself to camera, and have that ready. I did not.
Mm.
So
I mean, well, an SNL kind of is like, I guess I kind of want to ask, like, for SNL people, it's, do you choose between being an actor or a writer, or like did you have a dream of being a sketch performer with all of it, or did you want to be just an actor, just a writer kind of thing? Like, what, how does that work for you, or how in your mindset? Everybody's story is so different.
yeah, I think in my dream scenario, if I worked at a show like that, I would love to be a sketch performer who also kicks around ideas with the writers and collaborates. And like I think I look at people like Amy and Tina, who are performers and writers, or people like Bill Hader and all the people like that. They're obviously performers, but they're also writers, and like I think that combination always appealed to me. That's one reason I love being a writer and performer at Conan.
Mm-hmm.
and at Stephen's show, even though we do less of it, it's always fun to collaborate as a writer and as a performer. I love
Yeah.
the mix of the two, but I do know that some people who were performers uh, before they got hired at SNL, some of them were hired as writers, and like I believe Jason Sudeikis got hired as a writer and then kind of started performing after being hired as a
Mm,
writer, which is great that he was able to do that. But a lot of times you're one or the other, and the actors do write, but
right.
sometimes you're hired as one or the other. Like Adam McKay performed with us in Chicago, but he
Right.
mostly just wrote at SNL and became one of their best writers and head writer. But and Paula Pell, who's just an
Oh, so
absolutely
amazing. Love
delightful
her.
performer, had been a performer but was hired as a writer at SNL, but
Yeah.
ended up performing in sketches and was always super great. But so it really depends. Like I know like for example, there were some wonderful performers who didn't really perform much at SNL when they were writers, like Bob Odenkirk, who he
Mm.
was in Chris Farley's last show at Second City that summer of 1990. Bob was in that show, and he was great, and he was always a really good performer. But at SNL, I think he might have been in like one or two sketches. So there were some wonderful performers who were primarily writers at SNL.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as far as back to parks, I know that we've gone on tangents, but this is kind of why I wanted to talk to you because there's just so much to fangirl over. But back to parks, the first episode that you were on, you smashed an egg on Amy's head, and I'm very curious. So, were you carrying like the egg in your pocket during the scene, or how did that work?
I think I did have it in my pocket, and they had to kind of pre-crack it a little bit, and I remember
Oh.
feeling a little bad because the first time it wasn't pre-cracked quite enough. I hope I'm not ratting out the wonderful
No,
prop
no,
performers.
no, I love
They
this.
were they were wonderful people, but I think the first time it didn't quite crack exactly right on Amy's head, and she was such a good sport about it, and she's like, I think we need to make the crack a little bigger, guys, and she is super nice about it, and but she just underplayed that line so beautifully too. Like I was not aware of that statue. She's got
Right.
egg all over her face, and just
Literally.
playing it with such dignity. She's got yolk all over her face, and that was. I remember feeling like, oh, they're like, you got to really let her have it with the egg, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to like hurt Amy. I was so afraid I was gonna like smack her in the head, and but she was such. I mean, she's such a pro and such a. It was funny too. I remember when they were going to throw me in the lake.
Hmm.
They actually had a stuntman who ended up looking just like me in my exact outfit with a hair. Because I had said to Amy, it was so funny. I said even that day when we were shooting it, I said, Amy, you can really throw me in the lake. You don't if you're worried about it, the double matching or whatever. I said you can throw me in, and she was so sweet. She goes, "Oh, you'd probably get killed." Because and she's probably right because I didn't realize they were going to throw him head first,
Oh
and so they got a
yeah.
guy who was just a stuntman pro, and they dressed him up. He was my height. They made the hair look perfect, so you'd never know. I don't want to
No.
spoil the illusion, but that was a stuntman going in that lake. He was a great guy, but I had offered to let him throw me in, and Amy's like, "Oh, Brian, you'd probably
Don't do
break
that.
your neck or
Well,
something."
Amy had a stunt double in like the first or second season when they had the pit that she like falls over backwards, like head over heels,
Oh.
and she had a stunt person too. So I love hearing the behind the scenes and like the nuts and bolts of it. It doesn't it makes the illusion even more fun for me to be like, oh my god, they made magic happen, literally.
Well, I was stunned when I saw the stuntman. I was like, "Wow, they really that." I would think that was me. Like if I saw, he was much handsomer. Just kind of a stuntman, chiseled kind of guy. But they had the hair exactly right and the clothes and everything. It was really impressive.
Oh my god. Well, do you remember getting any sort of like direction or anything as far as like how to play your character, or were they more so like we know Brian, he's gonna do his thing? You know what I mean?
They were pretty. I think I remember it being kind of a fast shoot. Like they were just kind of. It's funny too because I'm so often when you're called in for I've only done a few sitcom things, but they do kind of want someone who's kind of like you if they've cast you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unusual for me because most of the stuff I've done, that I've written for myself or done on late night shows, they're completely different from how I am. Um, they're like, big Vikings or bikers who talk like this, and like and so for me to play someone like myself, it's usually someone else's thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think they called me in to kind of, I actually thought about asking them, how do you want this guy to be played? But I think most of the time when they call you in, it's shades of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
And how
That
you
just
see the
seems to be the
character.
way those things work. Those shows, they tend to kind of bring you in to play, even though a lot of people are playing characters very different from themselves, personality wise, vocally, and in terms of the way their speech patterns and everything, they tend to be kind of who those people are.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to do more TV stuff as far as acting goes?
I'd love to. I've always loved doing it. Um, Although it's one of those things where I'm so grateful to have had all these years in the late night world, but I've always enjoyed doing that, and I'd always be up for stuff. Like I always love doing outside stuff when they would get called. And it's funny too. You talk about doing characters that are. The one time I got called in to do a character that was very different from me, it ended up turning into a guy like me because it was a New Girl episode where I was playing a cop. It was Zoe Deschanel and Jake Johnson's first date,
Oh
and
my
this
gosh, I'll have
cop.
to go back and watch that.
Well, there's a cop who keeps disrupting their date by giving them tickets for various things, and I was supposed to be kind of a jerk cop, a no nonsense, just like, yeah, you're just handing them the ticket and being kind of a dick, and but this is a true story. It's so embarrassing. This was at like midnight in Hollywood on the street where we were shooting, and I was supposed to climb off this big police motorcycle, one of those big BMW motorcycles they ride.
Hmm.
And I'm not a motorcycle rider, and I'm clumsy, and I was getting off the bike, and it tipped and crashed to the ground, and
Uh-oh.
I reacted completely as myself. Like I thought I'd ruined the whole shoot, and I go, oh my god. And they thought it was really funny, and they said, let's just have you be basically Brian as this cop and just be like a nice cop who's just this. And so it turned into a completely different scene
That's
where I was just like this
wild.
kind of friendly cop, but I was supposed to be like, there was a scene where I tackled Dermot Mulroney, and that got completely cut and changed, and all because I accidentally tipped my motorcycle over like an idiot. I remember gasoline was pouring out, and I was like, oh my god, I've completely ruined the shoot. And they don't laugh because they can't laugh because it's a shoot, but they were all like laughing behind the curtain. I didn't know that they thought it was really funny when the motorcycle fell
I
over.
mean, that is funnier. A cop
it,
who's like, "Oh, geez, oh, like a Jerry of the cop world."
it was, and it is funny how I ended up like at 30 Rock. I was kind of, even though I was only in like 3 episodes, I ended up being kind of a Jerry like character. I was getting blamed for everything as Howard Jorgensen. So I was just the guy who gets blamed when things go wrong, which is very Jerry, like kind of
Oh yeah, because you were an executive with Alec Baldwin's character, right?
yeah. And I think originally, again, it was because of how I am. I think it was originally supposed to be a very confident Baldwin like character who's
Mm-hmm.
his protege, who's just super confident like he is. But because I'm me and I'm kind of awkward and have kind of a dorky, awkward energy, they ended up bringing me back and getting blamed for everything. So whenever things went wrong, blame Howard Jorgensen. And so I think originally he was supposed to be very put together, confident kind of young guy, like you know
Yeah.
Mr. Cool. And they're like, well, that's let's just have Brian get blamed because he would get blamed for everything. And I loved it. I was that was another wonderful experience just to be around those people.
Was that similar to Parks, where someone called you because they knew you from Conan, probably, or something like
Yeah, I
that?
think that was Tina. I think Tina just was like, she liked to call in various old Chicago friends. Like she called Miriam, my wife Miriam, in for
Oh,
a 30 Rock
sure.
bit where she's in the, I think it was the Sandwich Day episode. Jason Sudeikis is going to the airport, and he finds out the airline's been canceled, not just the flight. And
Right.
Miriam's this jerk at the counter who's just like, we're still going to make popcorn, just no more airplanes. I'm sorry. And she's just a complete jerk. And again, Miriam is especially funny playing jerks, even though
Right.
she's not at all like she's really fun playing people who horrify her in real life.
I love that. Oh my gosh. That's so fun. Oh my God. Well,
That
I hope that you get to do more TV shows and movies too, because that would be really fun. I mean, do you want to write a TV as well, or mostly just, yeah, what is your vibe?
I love the idea of doing that someday. I've never had the discipline to write a long form thing like a screenplay or something, but I
It's a
admire
lot.
anyone who has, and all my friends who've done it. I have the highest respect for that, and for people like Tina who've written so many wonderful things, and Amy and Adam McKay writing screenplays and stuff. Like Adam, even back in the Chicago days, he and Tina were always writing stuff, like just working. Their work ethic is as impressive as their talent, and like I remember Amy saying of Tina once, "No, nobody works harder. Like she's
Mm-hmm.
not just
Oh my gosh,
brilliant, which she
she's
is. She has.
amazing.
I always thought of Tina as Dorothy Parker without the drinking problem. Just like just like an
I bet she loves
incredible,
hearing that.
like an incredible laser wit, but in control of herself. And
Yes.
that I love Dorothy Parker. I think she would be a legend on Twitter. But Tina is just I've always admired her discipline as much
Yeah.
as her talent. And
Well, I mean, every writer that I look up to, as far, Tina, Mindy Kaling, they're always like, writing is the worst part of writing.
yeah, and yet they do it, and that's why I admire it so much. Like Mindy, yeah, I still remember Mindy being, like I said, she was an intern of ours too. She actually babysat my older daughter once.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, no, my daughter's 27 now, but this was probably 26 years ago. Yeah, she was a baby. So, but
Wow.
Mindy was interning, and she was sweet enough to. I found out she had babysat for some other writer, and I was like, would you be free?" And she was very nice to do it, and I'm so happy for her too. Haven't really stayed in touch with her, but
That's so
yeah,
cool.
she's always another person that was just always writing. She wrote a play about the Matt and Ben play you might have heard about.
Yes.
And she just
Yes.
wrote that for her and her friend that she went to Dartmouth with, and they just put it on stage at like a fringe festival in New York, and she got an agent from that. And that's why I always tell people, just make stuff, just make fun stuff with people you like, and put it out there, and you never know
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And she got an agent from that, and it's
Yeah, and I mean, that's also, I believe, one of the things that she auditioned for SNL too. I've been watching
oh, I
all the
didn't know
SNL
that.
documentaries, which they're on Peacock now. If you watch Parks and Rec, you'll probably have Peacock. But all the SNL things, documentaries are on there, and that's also one of the, when you were talking about auditioning and not getting it, so many amazing people auditioned for SNL and didn't get it. And I think that's just a really cool reminder of, it's just like you said, keep going, and, don't let one audition kind of mess it up. But SNL is a whole other beast. It almost feels culty, like in a great way, but just, it's so hard.
Well, there are a lot of wonderful people like Jim Carrey and Steve Carell and Lisa Kudrow and all these people that auditioned for that show that didn't get it, and I think would have been great. And yeah, it's very yeah. I think sometimes it's a timing thing or what
Totally.
type they need at the time or whatever.
Totally.
Uh, I have no regrets looking back. Well, I do have a regret that I didn't have material that was ready to go. But so that's what I tell young people when they ask advice. I say, if that's the kind of show you want to be on, have stuff ready to go. Like have scripts ready to go if someone might ask you. Like I love this story about Donald Glover, who
Oh,
when
sure.
30 Rock asked him, they saw his comedy videos like that he did on YouTube and stuff, and they go, "Hey, we think those videos are funny. Do you have any sitcom spec scripts?" And he's like, "Yep." Like he had them ready to go, and
Whoa,
like that
amazing.
was not me.
He auditioned for SNL too.
Donald Glover did.
Yes, he was in the documentary.
Oh, I didn't know that. I got to see that.
Yes.
I did not know
Crazy.
that. I don't really know Donald. I know of him,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm a fan, but I don't know him. But I remember hearing that, and that he just like I always go back to that quote. I think it was Robert Evans, the film producer, who said, "Luck is where opportunity meets preparation."
Hmm.
And I think that's what it is. Like when you don't know when the opportunity is going to come, but if you're ready when it comes,
Hmm.
then you can take advantage of it. And I was a little too passive as a young person. Luckily, I, I had some wonderful opportunities like working
It
at
worked
Conan
out.
and everything. And I'm incredibly grateful for it. But I do
Sure.
tell young people, if there's something you're dreaming of doing, believe in yourself enough to be ready when it comes, because you never
Hmm.
know when that opportunity is going to come, and if you and it may not come again if you don't aren't ready to capitalize on it.
Yeah, that's so true, and that's a good reminder too. Okay, last like three questions, rapid
Sure.
fire, kind of, sorta. Um, what was your ultimate dream when you were a kid? As far as was it the entertainment business? And if so, the entertainment business was it, being a sketch performer, or what was in your head at that time when you started to get into the acting show business part of it?
It's funny. When I was a kid, I was an obsessive comedy fan, but the thought didn't really enter my head that I could possibly do it myself
Mm.
as a career, because I grew up in suburban Chicago. No one I knew was in show business, and I was like, it almost seemed like everyone in entertainment came from outer space, like they were like these that were these incredible aliens that came down to entertain us. And I know the rational side of my brain knew that wasn't true, but it felt like that. And I also thought all performers had to be extroverts, and I was very shy. Now I know that I'd say the majority of performers I meet are actually introverts. But when I was a kid, that wouldn't have made any sense to me. Like, it never would have believed in a million years that Steve Martin could be kind of a quiet, shy person. I just thought he'd be wacky all the time,
Mhm.
or that like Steven's basically an introvert. Conan has a lot of introverted qualities. A lot of the best musicians I've seen on stage turn out to be very shy people off stage, which is that as a kid wouldn't have. So it didn't even enter my mind to do it until I did improv, like later on in my early 20s. I fell totally in love with it, and I think that's when I started going, I would love to do this. I don't expect to be able to do this for a living in a million years, but I'm at least going to do this improv stuff that I love, uh, as long as I can, and with these people I love doing it with. And I'm so grateful that it led to these other things. But early on, I didn't really think in a million years that it would lead to a career. Most of us in Chicago were doing it purely for the love of it, and we
For
weren't making
fun,
any.
kind of? Like, is that why you started taking them? Taking
Because of what?
classes? Because of fun? Like, is that why you started taking classes? Like, you were just interested in it and it wasn't more of like, I want to do this to go be in a TV show kind of vibe?
I think once I started getting into it more and more in Chicago, I started to dream that maybe I could
It could
do it
happen.
as a
I
career, but
see.
I didn't really think it was going to happen in a million years. I remember thinking, I mean, so many of my comedy heroes growing up, like the SCTV people and early SNL and Monty Python and all those people, were huge heroes of mine. Um, but yeah, I never really made the jump to the idea that I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
But once I started doing it in the Chicago scene, and I think once you start seeing someone from your scene reach the next level, like when Farley got SNL, I was so happy for him, and it wasn't a surprise at all, because even seeing him in Madison in little bars and this little theater, the Arc Theater, where we did shows, it was so obvious how special he was, and the same with Amy and Steven and a lot of these people that you see. Carell, I remember going up to Carell in a 7-Eleven parking lot in Chicago before I worked at Second City, and just going, "Hey, I just want to say you're really great," and like, and because
I'm
I
such a
didn't
huge
know him
fan.
yet, I didn't get hired yet at Second City, and I just was a he was just one of my local heroes. And he was so nice about it, and probably thought I was going to stab him or something. It came out of the dark, but I remember thinking, oh, I'd love to do that. My biggest dream, to tell you the truth, my biggest dream when I lived in Chicago, top of the mountain for me, that I never thought beyond, was working at Second City. That
Okay,
was my
wow.
ultimate dream, and I didn't think that was going to happen because I wanted it so bad. And it was just, I auditioned a few times, and when I finally did get hired, I remember thinking, I don't really care anything that happens after this, because this is where, and we didn't make any money or anything, a little bit to get by, but that was the top of the mountain for me, and I didn't
Wow.
really think beyond that, and so having to getting to do some things beyond that, I'm incredibly grateful for. But that, when I was in Chicago, that was my biggest goal, was working at Second City, and I'm
Wow.
so grateful I got to do that.
It gone so far beyond.
Oh, thank you. I try to remind myself, like, just to be really grateful for the things I've gotten to do, and even like there are ups and downs, of course, and everything, but I'm so grateful for the people more than anything that I've gotten to know and watch and work with and be inspired by, and collaborate with. I'm beyond grateful for that, including people like Amy.
Amazing. And I mean, Second City is the top. I don't mean to saying that it's not, but I mean, that is so wonderful to be able to continue it from there, you know?
Oh, thank you, Holly. Yeah,
Love
I do. I
that.
am grateful that, and it's nice too that it's a community that's like, I think Del Close, the great director guru, said,
Uh huh.
it's Second City is a little like the mafia. Once you're a member, you're never not a member. And
Yeah.
so it's like you can go off and like there's a community there that we all feel like a sort of a kinship, even if people who've worked at Second City that I don't know, I feel a weird kinship, like we're not to compare it to something as glorious as this, but it's almost like we're in the Marines,
Yeah.
and you meet a fellow Marine that you didn't serve with, but you have some kind of shared experience. And
That's what they talked about in SNL. They say all the different cast members from different, like, if you weren't a cast member together, if you know that they were a cast member, it's like instant connection, instant camaraderie, you know?
I'm sure, especially with that level of intensity, like talk about being in a foxhole, like, and just, I mean, Farley said that when he got hired at SNL, he asked Del Close, who'd worked there a little bit, "What's it like, Del?" And Del says, "Well, it's a lot like being shot out of a cannon every week." And that was really
That
probably
sounds about
exactly how
right.
it feels. You're being shot out of a cannon with no net to catch you, and live
Hoping it works
television.
out.
It's even though we taped like our show at Conan live to tape, basically, it wasn't going out live in front of people as you did it,
Sure.
and that's got to be an incredible rush, but also incredibly
Frightening.
terrifying. you
Frightening.
know.
Oh my gosh. Well, what shows are you watching now?
Oh, there's so many. Let's see. God, I watch so many shows. God, I'm
Are you watching
really.
Severance?
Oh, I love Severance. Yes,
Oh my
that is
gosh.
definitely one I'm obsessed with, and I'm so bad. I'm drawing a blank because there's so many things. I watched. Trying to think what else I watched recently. I've caught up on a few of those Apple shows that nobody even talks about. Like
I know.
there's one called Dark Matter that was kind of
Oh
cool,
yeah, I heard
and
about that.
it was filmed in
Lioness or
Chicago. And
something.
Severance is amazing. It's such a work of art. Like it's not only and it's so cool to see Adam Scott
That
in a
kind
role
of
like, I
role.
mean, he's such a wonderful actor with comedy or drama. He can. I think the his ability to kind of switch between the two is extraordinary. And yeah, and there's shows in recent years that I've on the comedy side. One show that it's not brand new or anything, but I think You Should Leave is one of those shows that
Oh yeah, I
that
need to
just
watch
has
that.
me crying, literally crying, laughing. But yeah, there's so many shows I enjoy. Trying to
Okay,
think of.
well, that's great.
Yeah, those are
You
a
should
couple
try
that
Shrinking Next. If you have Apple TV, try Shrinking Next after you watch Severance because it's
I
really,
will.
really good.
Thanks. Yeah, I know. We watch Severance every week when it comes on. It's really really cool.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and yeah, there's so many other shows I want to get into.
I
Um,
know there's so much out there. It's kind of gnarly. Abbott Elementary is great.
it's very good. I've only seen a couple episodes, and I was really impressed. It's
Yes.
extremely well written and very well performed, and I've been meaning to catch
Yeah,
more of that.
totally. And then St. Dennis Medical is a lot of other parks and The Office people, so that's fun too.
I've heard that's very good too. Thank you for reminding me of
Oh
that.
my gosh. Well, I'm just
Yeah,
adding things to your list. It gets overwhelming.
yeah, it's funny too. I don't know. I've heard other comedy writers say this. It's kind of funny that a lot of times I do still love comedy, but a lot of times it's funny. Like I forget which comedy writer said this, but he goes, "Comedy writers go home and watch The Wire." Like,
Right.
like you don't tend to go home and watch as much comedy as you watched when you were younger for some weird reason. Maybe because you're steeped
Maybe
in
you're
it all
surrounded
day.
by it. Yeah.
You go home and you watch like something really intense, like
You want something different,
yeah, The Wire,
like
or shows
Hannibal
like
Lecter.
that. Yeah, I don't know why that is, but we do tend, or I'll sometimes just watch like college sports or something just to kind of escape from the news
Yeah.
headlines and escape from all that stuff. But yeah, I do find that funny that like because I was obsessed. I watched nothing but comedy when I was younger, and I still love it, and I still admire it tremendously. But um, yeah, you do tend to sometimes watch. It's like a show like Severance is like a perfect escape from everything we
Great
do.
happy medium. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
love that.
and it's funny too because sometimes some of the most so-called dramatic shows like Succession, which Adam McKay helped produce and everything, it's extremely funny, but it's also really heavy and like
Yeah,
dramatic.
dark.
And there's the people are often such horrible people to each other, but there's a lot of really darkly funny stuff in those shows that so comedy, I like when comedy creeps into drama because that feels more like real life to me. Like a show
Mm-hmm.
like Party Down, I love too, with another Adam Scott gem. Party Down really hit me hard as like everything I love about the combination of funny and sad, like
Yes.
extremely funny, also heartbreaking in a beautiful way, like people trying
Yes.
to achieve their goals and like not necessarily getting anywhere and having relationship problems, but also such a funny show.
Oh my
And
gosh, you will
that's
love Shrinking if that's your vibe. You will love
thank
that
you.
show. And then I feel the same way about like Scrubs, Will Trent, the
Scrub.
new show on ABC. That one is drama, but there's so much random comedy in there that's really funny. And yeah, I agree for
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah, and yeah, Scrubs was I watched it initially because of Neil, and I
It's a
was
great show.
very impressed with the show and how funny it was. But yeah, Neil was my way in. There was another show I watched, Lodge 49, which not a lot of people know about.
Mm.
Wonderful show. I think it might still be on Hulu, but it's a wonderful show. I watched it because my first big improv hero, Dave Pasquazi, who
Oh,
is a wonderful actor too, was in this show, Lodge 49. But I'd highly recommend it. It was only
okay.
on for 2 seasons, um,
I'll watch it.
but it was Wyatt Russell. Kurt Russell's son was the star of
Mm-hmm.
it, and with another wonderful ensemble cast. But that's a real underrated gem. I would recommend to people
Love that.
if you can find it on Hulu
Somewhere.
or wherever. It's terrific.
Okay. Okay. And then the very last question is that I ask all of the guests is other than Ted, who do you think that you relate to the most on Parks? Slash, who do you see yourself in?
Oh, that's a good question. Because Ted, to be honest, like I relate to a little bit, but not as much. I think in terms of the worldview and everything, I always kind of connected with. He's
Mm-hmm.
just he seems to be doing his best, and you know, like I love like that things have gone wrong for him at times, but it was never because he did anything malicious or anything.
Right.
I think I and I think Jerry, in terms of the kind of put upon nature, like, I think always being Jim O'Hare has a wonderful kind of everyman quality that I relate to that I feel like that's a role I can in a real office where I can imagine myself being like that, being designated as that kind of guy in an office.
No,
So,
I
and
hope not.
Jim brings so much wonderful. I love how wonderful a guy Jim is and what a wonderful character that is. And I love that all these really nice people are mean, are mean to him for no,
Oh my gosh.
and you
We
can't
talk
figure
about
out
that.
exactly why.
Well, I love that he has such a wonderful home life. That's my
Yeah,
favorite thing. He has the
Christy
best home
Brinkley
life
as his
out of all
wife.
of us. Yes, exactly. So I'm like, that is perfect, I feel.
It is, and I love that. One of the things I always loved about Parks too is how they would throw in those wonderful little surprises, like you find out that he has this gorgeous wife and this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful family, extremely happy home life, and I always loved like the little unexpected things too, like I'm still so sad about the loss of Harris Whittles, who I didn't really know. We knew of each other and like were kind of acquaintances from afar, but he would bring in these wonderful moments like Werner Herzog, as the landlord renting apartments and stuff. And I love that all the writers brought in their own personalities and their own kind of humor, and it
Yeah.
complemented each other so well. Some people were more story structure people. Some people, like Harris said, he would come in and kind of lay the jokes like clothing on a jungle gym, like
Mm-hmm.
on top of what was built. And he wasn't the structure guy; he was like the lay funny stuff in on top of the structure guy. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about, I think, that staff, was that they had such a great combination of styles and personalities. Like
Yeah,
Michael
I love
Schur.
Harris. I every time he's in the animal control, it's so
Oh,
funny. All the jokes that he has contributed, it's just such a legend.
yeah, he's of all the people I didn't know personally, I gotta say I'm still incredibly sad about what we've lost in losing
Mhm.
Harris, because he brought such a fresh perspective and so many, and just seemed like such a sweet guy. And I never heard a bad word about him from anybody, and everybody loved him. I didn't mean to get on such a sad topic,
No,
but I do,
yeah.
I'm grateful for all the work he did, and I'm grateful that that it still exists, for people to see.
I am too. No, every time he's on the show, whether he wrote or is on Animal Control, I always have like a brief, tribute to him because I'm like, this show really wouldn't be what it is without him, honestly,
I
because he's such a
agree,
huge
and
backbone of it. So I love that so much. But thank you so much for spending so much time with me. I'm sorry I took up so much of your time. This was the most fun thing ever. What a great way to end the week, a crazy week. And it was just so nice to talk to you.
so nice to talk to you too, Holly. Thank you so much for having me on. It was really an honor to talk to you about this show that I love so much, and to have been even a small part of that universe, a tiny, microscopic part of that universe, is will always be a great honor for me. So,
Well, hey, you changed article too for us.
well, thank you, and yeah, I'll always be.
Big deal.
And I'm so glad they cut that line about what I did for a living, so I could come back as the
Me
jeweler.
too.
So,
I know. I'll have to reach out to you if I have any other questions about the next episode that you're on, and we'll, touch base then. But yes, thank you again so much. You are a huge part of Parks, and I know, like you said, it was a tiny part, but we loved it. So
thank
very
you so
grateful
much.
to
And
you.
I think Sam Means was one of the guys who helped bring me back too. So thanks, Sam. Um,
Oh,
because they kind of brought me back as the jeweler because they realized they could. So,
yeah,
by the way, fun little fact: you
yeah.
might be able to tell this if you watch the jewelry store, but they had fun, like, hidden jokes, like, because they were all like Game of Thrones fans and Lord of the Rings fans. You might, I don't know if you can tell, but there was a sign in the jewelry store when I was helping Rob Lowe and Rashida, who another, they were so nice to me too. But there was a sign. There's a sign behind the counter that says "The Fellow Shop of the Ring."
Oh
Like,
my
you
gosh.
probably can't tell, but it was like there were a lot of. I can't even imagine how many hidden jokes I don't even see when I watch the show, because the cameras don't even catch them. But I remember in the script too, it said my name was Ted Gamma Thromes. And I'm like, nobody ever said my last name, but they just threw in this Game of Thrones was like my last name, just to make themselves laugh. And I think that reminds me of like the Muppet Show, where they would just throw in stuff to make themselves laugh. And so I love all the little hidden thing parts of that world, that the fact that they put up a sign that said "The Fellow Shop of the Ring" as the name of my store is just, even if no one ever saw it, just as a little extra, like, Easter egg silly joke.
For themselves.
Anyway,
Yeah, they're really good at puns for business names, but they're also, yeah, Mike Schur, we talk about this on the show very frequently. Mike Schur makes up these random names for the characters, especially the last name. So if you're ever bored on IMDb, I always tell our listeners, like, scroll to the bottom where you can see the guest stars and just the funniest, craziest names in the whole world, and they're just made up by mostly by Mike Schur, but I'm sure other writers contributed too.
that's fantastic. Yeah, he's a brilliant guy, and he certainly assembled a brilliant show, and I'm grateful to be, like I said, a very small part of it. So thank you
Yeah.
again for having me on, Holly.
Oh my gosh, of course. And then I wanted to tell you, so I listen to Parks and Recollection sometimes, the one with Jim O'Hare, and Adam Levine, who are the script supervisor, and they had Patton on, and he's spoke so highly of you. I don't know if you listened to it, but he said you were the nicest dude in the whole world, and it's so true. So
Oh,
I'm
thank you
glad
so
that
much,
he said that.
Holly. Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I listened to it, because I love those guys, and especially with Patton being on there. And that was such a, I was so touched by that. It was
That's
such
so
a lovely
nice.
surprise that they said that. And yeah, thank you so much for reminding me of that. That was a really lovely surprise.
Yeah. Well, I'm wishing you the best of luck and broken legs in the best way.
Oh,
Not
thanks
from
so much.
being dumped in a lake, but
Well, thank you, Holly, and I look forward to just catching up on all the other episodes you've done, and just hearing your insights on the show and everything. So thank you again for having me on.
yeah, of course. Thank you for taking so much time. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a good night.
You too. Thank you, Holly.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
There's a Parkinson Pals and there's also therapy too.